Today's conversation, Shane, is one of my favorites, and I know it's going to be all of our listeners' favorites too, because it's the one that everybody wants to default to and talk about. Right? It's this intake, it's marketing, it's bringing in the money, bringing in the leads. Having all this business, and so it's kind of to me, it's a sexy conversation. Right, when you get into seduction, stuff like that, and all those. But this is episode 4 of this series, as we really dive into what is holding you back and what does it mean to grow and to scale, and how do you actually pull it off. So if you haven't listened to the previous 3 episodes, I would recommend going back into whatever device it is you're listening to and jump in and catch up, so that you can be up to speed on where it is that we're going with today. But welcome, Shane, man. How are you this fantastic morning?
I'm doing good. It's midway through the week, and it's I like what I do, is what I'll say, right? Like, I like running my firm, and I get excited at the beginning of the week because it's a fresh week, and at the middle of the week I'm like, okay, I have my manager day, and then on Thursday and Friday I'm like, okay, we're trying to wrap up strong.
Yeah.
But and I know everybody. We think everybody loves intake and sales, and we look at it as sexy. But honestly, there's a bunch of lawyers out there who hate this part of the business. They hate marketing. They hate sales. They hate having to sell their legal services.
Yeah.
So in like the business world, it's totally cool and sexy. Sometimes in the legal industry, it's like a necessary evil, right? It's like something you hate to do.
That's true. Yeah, you've got like 2 camps, right? It's almost like the 2 polar opposites. You got some people who are like, this is the greatest thing ever, and others who are like, I feel like a charlatan. I should just be able to have my skills and talents sell themselves. I don't want to have to sell you on anything.
I don't want to have to sell it all. And I would say for those people, you've got to learn at least the basics, but then you don't have to do all of this yourself, right? Like, that's one of those things we talk about. You can hire, and I'm not talking a $100,000 employee, but you can hire a $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year employee to do a lot of this stuff. Now, they're not going to do it perfect. Obviously, they're not going to do it as great as a $200,000 employee. They're not going to do it as, and I'm a big fan of, if you don't want to do it in-house, spend your time vetting a vendor, right? And vet 2 or 3 vendors. And if the first one doesn't work out, just realize, like anything else, the first one didn't work out. I mean, the first time you test drive a car, a lot of times you don't love that car anymore.
Yep.
But you don't not buy a car. Right. What you do is you go drive another car. It's all the same with advertising and for vendors. You don't like the first vendor, cool. Just move to a different vendor. Don't say I'm not going to drive anymore. So you don't have to love marketing and sales if you don't want to. If you want to only work on running your firm or practicing law, that's cool. We can work on showing you how to do that. I mean, I happen to like sales, right? I like marketing. Well, let me rephrase it. I like the sales conversation. I don't actually love a bunch of the marketing, right? Like, I like talking to new clients or new leads and explaining to them why I'm the best guy to help them, right?
Yeah.
Because I firmly believe I'm a great lawyer. I firmly believe my firm is a great firm. I firmly believe we help people. Yeah. And if you're out there and you're one of our listeners and that's how you feel, cool. But I also know, I was told years ago, if you think you're better than the guy down the street, you honestly have a moral obligation to sell and market yourself better so that those clients come to you versus the guy down the street who's terrible.
Yeah.
Right? The guy down the street who's a shark, who doesn't care.
But he's great at marketing.
Right.
And this is the problem. If you are the greatest and you don't tell people you're the greatest, well, then nobody knows you're the greatest. Right? And word of mouth is just not enough, not if you actually want to grow and scale. And here's a point I want to make, Shane. You don't have to love it, but someone on your team needs to love it.
Exactly. 100%.
So if it's not you, that's fine. We're not saying, hey, as a law firm owner. Now, if you're just starting out, guess what? You're going to have to embody the identity of a marketer for a while. You're going to have to be the one who's doing those things. There's no option around it. But I think something that's cool, and this is really, if I look at the core message of what today's show's about, is most of you don't actually have a marketing problem. You think you do. you think it's this marketing, and it probably shows up for a lot of you who don't actually like marketing. You're like, it's this thing I don't kind of really fully understand, and it sits over in the corner, and I wish we were better at it. I wish we could do this better. I wish, right? And you look at this, and you think that's the problem, but dude, Shane, how often have you identified in your firm when you think one thing is the problem, but the problem is actually something entirely different?
Oh, I don't want to say most of the time, but a whole bunch of time, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'd say at least half the time, we think it's this one issue, and it's not.
Yeah.
You know, right? And I've had issues where I thought, oh crap, what happened to my marketing? Suddenly it sucks, right? Nobody's doing it. And then you start digging in and you realize, oh, we put a trackable phone number on there that's not ringing my intake team. Well, geez, that was dumb. Or
Oops.
yeah, or well, all those calls are routed through the receptionist, who is busy and is not answering them, so they go into the answering service, and then they're getting dumped in my general answering service mailbox, and they're not getting called for an hour, 2 hours, 3, kind of deal. So it's usually a different problem, like you say. A lot of times the ads or whatever marketing is working, it's these other processes you don't have in place that aren't, right? Like, I talk to lawyers all the time, and they're like, and the question, of the people who come into your office, or of the people you want as clients, what's your conversion rate, right? How many become clients? And they're always like, dude, any case I want that I talk to, 90%. That's what they all tell me, 90%.
Every single, I've never had someone not say that, which is so wild to me. I'm like, really? So you're like almost perfect? You're like a perfect closer?
Right. They're like, of any case I want, it's 90%. And then you go in and you track. You track everyone that came in. You have mark whether it's a qualified lead, right? Somebody they want, and then what their conversion rate is. And it's usually, the good guys, 50-55% is great. Nobody's at 90. I have yet to find anybody at 90%. Probably not even. I haven't tracked myself in a long time trying to make that pitch, but I would. The data says I wouldn't be at 90% either, and I'm really good at that part.
Well, I think you're bringing up the great fallacy of our own ego, right, and how we just think we're better than we are. And I've watched this happen with large firms that have large intake teams that are trying to pull revenue, and the numbers they're converting. So there's a conversion something, right? Revenue is being made, and when they want more revenue, this particular lawyer, the guy that owns the firm, his default was always, well, we need to spend more money in marketing to make more money. And the problem was he hadn't done exactly what you're talking about, Shane, and gone through and actually looked at what was the speed to call, right? Like how quickly when a lead came in was it actually being responded to, and in essence it's like this. So here's a great way of doing this. Like, so this was I was a young kid. My grandpa owned a cherry orchard, and he sweet cherries and sour cherries, and these he would hire these workers that would come in and they would pick them. But we were young boys and we wanted to earn some money. So he was like, hey, you pick these trees, and you got to pick a tree. He's like, and you have to pick the whole tree, not just the bottom stuff that's easy for you to reach. You got to get up on the ladder. You got to do all the hard stuff. Now, I can promise you what we didn't want to do was to get up on the ladder and do all the hard stuff. We wanted to grab all the low-hanging fruit on this cherry tree. And so we would do that. And even though my grandpa said, don't move on to another tree till you've picked this whole tree, we would move on to another tree because we didn't want to do the hard stuff. We didn't want to have to deal with it. It was so much easier just to grab the low-hanging fruit. That example is exactly what I watch most people do. They will spend money on marketing. It comes in, and they get all of the cream. They get all the easy, low-hanging fruit. And they're like, hey, we closed it all. And then to make more money, instead of realizing that tree, i.e. that lead or that market spend, actually still has gold in it, they just spend more money to bring in more cream into more low-hanging fruit. And literally, I've watched companies with millions of dollars being left untapped, unutilized, because their system itself was actually broken. And this is the key. This is why I say you don't actually have a marketing problem. What you have is a system problem. You have an intake problem. You have a problem with what happens, and do you have optics? Can you see from when a lead hits your ecosphere, what exactly happens to it all along the way across the board. And this particular guy I'm referring to, like what he thought was a marketing problem, what he actually found out was that his conversions were terrible, and his intake team had a shitty script. They were losing. I mean, he was basically throwing money away, and he didn't even know it. He thought, no, they're doing a good job because this number was coming out the end. But then when he actually dove in and realized, he's like, oh, my gosh. And he was disgusted because these are things he wouldn't have done. Like, in these conversations, he wouldn't have said things that way. He wouldn't have done it. But he realized his whole intake team had gone rogue, right? They were just kind of like doing their thing, and he had taken his eye off of what was happening. And what's crazy is he doubled revenue by doing no more ad spend. In fact, he actually spent less because he realized the problem. And so he spent less money on ads to bring less leads in, but he actually fixed the conversion problem with the leads he had, and his revenue doubled.
Yeah.
Right? So that's an intake problem, not I need to spend more money on, SEO, or I need, Google AdWords or pay-per-clicks or any of these types of things. It was literally coming down to, okay, crap, this is where I'm broken here. So that's just one example.
And usually, though, that's a conversation, right? And that's a conversation like you and I can zero in super quick.
Yeah.
Because we've just done it a lot.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say. But similar thing. I had a conversation with a dude who was complaining, I got a lead problem. All my ads are stink. I'm like, well, maybe, but talk to me about it. And then he's like, well, I spent this much money and this many leads came in. And I'm like, well, that sounds pretty good. That's like $50 a lead. I'd take that any day of the week, And then he said, I'm like, tell me about the rest of it. And then I'm like, well, it sounds like you got a conversion problem, not a lead problem.
Yep.
And he's like, what do you mean? And then we go into his follow-up process, and he's like, well, geez, I never even thought about that. I was just going to dump the campaign. Like, I know you didn't look at the whole process. You didn't look at the number. You didn't look at anything you were doing other than just leads, clients, and money. And it is a problem. It is a process. It is a dive into and talk about your intake system. What are you doing? I mean, you talk speed to call, right? I mean, that's one of the simplest and most effective ways to change your intake numbers. I mean, that right there. And what's speed to lead mean? What do you mean by that when you say that, Trevor?
So how quickly, when that lead comes in, what is your team doing with it? Or you, if it's you who's dealing with it. Like, how quickly are they going into your ecosphere? And here's what I'll tell you. These people who, let's say you've got somebody who's been in an accident. You might be the first person they call, but you're not the only person they call. No. Not even close. So when that happens, you have to realize that usually the winner of the race is the one who gets there first. I mean, that just kind of makes sense. It doesn't even mean that you're the best. So if you have a system that's broken, and with smaller firms, I see this a lot, right, where you're the guy, and so you're the one answering the calls. So what happens when you and your wife are on date night? Are you still going to answer the calls, right? Or what is the system and the process inside of that? And so it literally comes as simple as it sounds. It's how quickly when that lead comes in, do you actually have a conversation with them? When a web lead comes in, what's happening there? How long does it take for that lead to hit the desk to where there's a system and a process of what do I do, how do I handle this, and move forward? He's a really good friend of mine, and he doesn't have a system for this. His system is it's all pinged to his cell phone, and he will answer calls on his cell phone wherever he is at with these leads. Like, I've literally watched him do it. We were hanging out with it was him, his wife, my wife, myself, and one other couple, and that dude probably took 6 phone calls throughout dinner.
Oh, wow.
Six of them. And he would just get up and leave. He would sit there and he'd be like, oop, got a lead, got a hot one, and he'd make some little joke, and he would get up and leave. And I just sat there and watched, and I'm like, dude, I'm looking at his wife, and I'm looking at that environment, and I'm like, dude, you can't keep this up.
No, I was going to say, my guess is his wife is wicked pissed.
Dude. And I think she's used to it. So you watch her, she almost what I watch is, dude, she's super disengaged from him in general. Like, it's like he just happens to be this thing that's there. Yeah. But there's no real, and so I'm like, dude, so if you don't, that's what's crazy, guys. If you want to solve problems, like a lot of times we create our own damn problems. And there's no reason for half the shit that we do that creates these issues for ourselves. But he's a great example of someone who doesn't have any kind of a system. What he's done a good job. He's speed to leads quick. He gets these leads and he takes those calls at all times. But what he's screwing up is that there's actually a process to build into this where he doesn't have to be the ringleader in the entire game and be the one who sacrifices his own life to actually pull this off.
And I'll tell you this, Trevor. We were looking for a traffic attorney, right? Like, one of my kids got a ticket or something, and we we're looking to hire somebody to help with that. And I didn't have any contact in that area, right? Because they're off in college,
right.
And so I'm calling lawyers up there. Nobody in my firm knew anybody over there. Like, no, we don't know anybody. I'm like, crap. Okay, I got to do it the old-fashioned way.
Right.
Just, I got a list. A friend of a friend gave me another attorney, but I called like 4 lawyers, I think. Maybe it was 3. I called 3, and 1 or 2 of them I left a message. It went right to somebody's cell phone, like you're talking about, right? Almost. And they picked up, and I could hear them. And I didn't hire that person. And one of the reasons I didn't hire that person was because I was like, dude, you're a lawyer. This is the middle of the day. This is not 6 o'clock at night even. This is the middle of the day. And they picked up their own phone call. Mm-hmm. It went right to them. It didn't go through a receptionist or a secretary or anything else. It went right to their cell phone, and they made their pitch. And they made a pretty decent pitch. But I was just like, dude, you don't even have a secretary, right? You don't have a receptionist. You got nobody. And so I didn't hire that lawyer because I was like, you're clearly not making enough money to where I don't like your whole system. I feel like you're desperate or whatever kind of deal. So I second-guessed everything they pitched me just because of that. So I like speed to lead, right? But I don't like lead to my phone during the middle of the day, right? It's a little different after hours maybe if you want to do it. But during the day, I do not recommend that at all. Even if you're a lawyer, if you're going to do that, I think what you do is you send it to a secretary, you send it to an answer service, and you just immediately call them back, right? But you've got some kind of screen in place to boost up your credibility, right? Because with none, you look desperate. You look like a baby lawyer who's got no clients, right? Who can't afford anything. And no matter how long you've been a lawyer.
I think the point you're making, which I love, is the fact that the speed doesn't have to be you.
Right. No, it doesn't.
So don't take this on as we're saying, hey, well, you've got to be that answering. No, there is cheap, and we're not going to get into exactly which companies to use, but there's lots of them that will answer the phones for you, and they're good at what they do. This is what they do. This is their business, and it costs you very minimal dollars, but it positions you in a powerful position. The key element is an understanding that lead has to happen, and then from that point, everything that happens from there, this is where you have to dissect, right? Even coming down to the tonality of the people answering your phone. What does your intake team sound like?
Yeah, do they sound like they care, or do they sound like they're not, right? Do they sound like a file, or do they interrogate people, right? Or do they ask questions and actually sound like they care, right? And I've seen lawyers get hung up on, well, it takes Susie, 20 minutes for every call versus somebody else who takes 5. Okay. Maybe that matters. Maybe it doesn't, right? Mm-hmm. I had an intake person who was not fast at all, but boy, did people love her, right? She would turn people down, say, no, we can't help you. And they would send positive 5-star reviews about, she couldn't help me.
Right.
So she was
couldn't
great.
help but referred us out and this and that. Yeah. Well,
it was a wonderful person.
Well, and I think a lot of this too is you're looking at you have to look at this though. This is data you have to look at. Like what's actually happening do you have a script and are people following the script?
Right.
And is their energy right? Right? And are you coaching on that? And are they working on, do you have worked into your script these micro closes throughout the call? Right? Where they're getting these little yeses. Is it a seductive process? Have you And these are all, we can't, there's too many to go through, and I don't want to go through all the nuts and bolts of what you would need to look at today in this episode.
A script review is a whole actual thing we'll do. We've done that for people. Let's see your script. And I know some people are like, I don't like a script. It sounds robotic, but it's not. You've got to have script, especially if your team is interviewing people.
You have to have a script. It just is. I remember my first job, I got a good job, not my first job, but this is my only job, telemarketing, that I got back in the day, a long time ago when I was going through college. And it was for Convergys, and I was selling American Express credit cards to like people to get them to get more cards or whatever. And
Uh-huh.
we had a script on every. It was the craziest thing, and it annoyed me, because I'm like I'm not a script guy. I'm not a script guy, right?
Right.
It's
And how old
bullshit.
were you? How old were you at the time?
Oh shoot, what I would 19 or 20?
19. Yeah. So you're clearly a hugely experienced sales guy.
Oh yes, I mean I had so many reps. I mean I could just close people without problem, right? But it was the scripts were you had them on your screen, and if they said this answer, there was like 3 different responses that they gave. Then you clicked the response, and then it brought up another script. Like it was so scripted down to the letter because they were obviously with credit cards they were dealing with a little bit of compliance, just like we are as attorneys. Like all of that's the same thing, but. Point being is there was a reason they had this, right? They didn't just have a script because it felt like they wanted to control everybody. No, because they knew I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and they knew that I could do one thing well. I could get on the phone, but I didn't know what to say once I got them on the phone. So then they were like, "Okay, well, here's what you say." And they tested it and they tried it, and they knew this worked. And when I followed the script, guess what? I converted. When I didn't follow the script, I didn't convert.
And yeah, and I was going to say what I would go back to is, for our smaller firms out there, right, who don't have a full-blown intake department. Now, if you've got an intake department, measure your speed to call, right? How quickly do they get a call from a live person? And 2, then look at your script and then start tracking your conversion rates on qualified clients, right? The people you actually want. But for the smaller firms, I would say, have some screener in place, whatever it is, right? Or answering service, secretary, receptionist, your paralegal, and have them qualify the person, right? Talk a little bit about your thing. Do they have, a list of 5 questions? And then however you get paid, do you get paid hourly? Do you get paid contingent fee, whatever? So people know, right? Like I'm a contingency firm, so they don't really have to qualify on money for me, right? Because we work for free until we collect. But a lot of firms aren't like that, right? If you're family law, if you're bankruptcy, there's sort of a normal price point.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you lock in like criminal. I know a lot of times that price floats up and down depending on the complexity, but they can ask some qualifying questions to make sure they really have some money, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they can ask them, hey, Mr. Higgins, normal retainer on a felony is somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000. Is that going to be a problem? Do you need a payment plan? Whatever your rules are there, have them. Money should come up, right? The lawyer shouldn't be talking to somebody who has no money to hire them. Yeah. That's just not a good plan.
I had one of the clients we work with. He actually put in a fee just to talk to him because he was like, I'm done talking to people that don't have any money. He's also, I need to make sure you're actually serious. So just to jump on a call with him was $500.
Yeah.
Period. It was the end of story. And he's like, that's what it costs. And there's people that went away. There's people that walked away and said, well, I'm not paying that. And he's like, okay, cool. Like, well, he didn't say anything to him. His staffers said, okay, cool. Well, then we're not the firm for you.
Yeah.
And so they kicked the unqualified out by doing that simple, right? Because if what he was hit the area law and what he was doing, like if they couldn't afford that, then there was no value in working with these people anyways. And so that's just another example of how, there's so many different ways that you could operate and pull this off. I think the key though is looking at, as we wrap up today's episode, is looking at, you have to look at the numbers. You have to look at what's actually happening. You have to look at the process. So first thing I'm going to give you some action items of what I want you guys, you could actually tactically go do right now. First thing, you better be recording every call that comes in, right? Like so that you can look at and review it. If you're not,
because you'd be amazed at the stuff that's said.
Oh my gosh.
By you and by everybody else on the team.
Oh my heavens, it is the craziest. So this doesn't matter if it's just you. If you're the only one making intake calls, right, or receiving calls, any of that, then record yourself so that you can go back and listen to it. Because your action items, you're going to pull the last week's worth of calls. It might be a ton of calls, and you're going to sound like, well, this is way too much work, Trevor. I don't have time to do this. I'm like, well, do you have time to grow and scale? Like, do you want to build out of this or not? Like, this is what I call king shit.
Well, what if you could cut your cost per lead in half? Or cost per client in half, right? Or shave a third off.
I don't think I think they will. I've never seen anyone who's done an actual review and they have dissected what's happening and made key adjustments that has not increased revenue.
Yeah.
Like your close conversions will go up. So this is worth real actual dollars. This isn't just like, thinking about it.
Well, it's funny you say that, Trevor, because we've got a pretty robust system, right? I mean, I've got people, we measure stuff, we audit calls, we do all this. But honestly, I think every time we do a full blown audit of like most every, you know what I mean, of the whole thing,
Yeah.
you find one or two things, and you find. I don't want to say we increased by 30%, but I think we generally cut it down by like 10%, right? Now,
Yeah.
that's assuming we're not doing them every week kind of deal. But, when some time goes by, you find errors, even in a place that's been doing it over and over and over and thinks they've got it down.
Yep. Yep.
So
you're like, I hold this standard. Well, you're going to find that some people have stopped holding the standard.
Yeah.
Like it's slipped a little bit. They stopped saying that one little thing that you wanted them to say. And they did it great for 30 days, 60 days, even maybe even a year. And then all of a sudden they got comfortable and they stopped doing it. And and the numbers will drip slightly so you don't notice. So yeah, for anyone, I don't care how efficient you think you are, how amazing you are, this part of the process. And if you don't have a big enough firm where you've got an intake manager, someone has to be monitoring this on a constant basis or it will slip. It will slowly. People only rise to the level of expectation that they are held to. Not that you don't say, hey, here's the expectation, and you walk away. It's whatever you're holding them to off of that measuring. And so I would do it as dumb and simple as this sounds. Just do it. Rank the calls. A 10 was meaning, hey, this was perfect. A 9 to it down to a 1. Right? What was the call when you reviewed it? And if you've got a lot of calls to review, just pick 1 or 2 a week or 1 or 2 a day, time block it out and just review those, identify it, and then identify what happened. Where's the opportunities inside of it? What coaching needs to exist, whether it's coaching with yourself or coaching with your team or whoever it is answering the call, and then role play. Like role play it. And what I want you to do is even if you find 10 things that are wrong, I don't want you to try to fix 10 things. If you try to fix 10 things, you're screwed. You won't do it. It won't work. You can't fix 10 things. But what you can do is you can fix one thing. So when you review this, you look at it, what's the one thing that needs to be fixed? What's the blaring red siren of, oh man, that's clearly a problem? Fix that, audit it a week later, and re-review it after they've had whether it's you or whoever it is has had a week to redo it, and then audit, did they do it? What does it look like? What's the result? And then guess what? This is a rinse and repeat. What's the next week? What's the next week? And keep finding the one thing until you have fine-tooth combed this, and then guess what? You might be able to ride that for a short window, and then everybody's going to slip off, and then you're going to have to do it again.
And I would say don't pick the hardest thing to do first, right?
No.
I mean, let's pick something easy and pick something you can measure, right? Like when we started measuring speed to call, and we worked on this for a while when we had a new system in place, right? When you first hear it, the team's like, what? Our speed to call is great. Really? 45 minutes? That's not great.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, where do you want it, boss? I want it 5 minutes, under 5 minutes. That's the benchmark for anything that comes over the web, under 5 minutes. And they're like, that's impossible. It's not impossible. Mm-hmm. They did bully me down till it was during work hours, but we got it down. It took some time, and then we moved on to something else. And amazingly, it worked, right?
Yep.
I mean, so I say speed to call is probably the first thing to work on your list, but maybe your team's calling quick.
Yeah, you might already have that one handled. If you don't, I agree 100%. You can make up for a lot of mistakes if you're just the first one to do it. If you're the first one to talk to them, you might have a shitty process, but that's
and you can measure it, and there's no ego involved in that one either.
Yeah,
right?
It's either happened in the time frame or it didn't happen in the time frame. And so anyhow, so that brings us to a close of today's episodes. Again, this is episode number 4 of the series. This will be a 10-part series as we go through really all the different sticking points and how to get you unstuck inside of the game of building and growing your own law firm, and doing it in a way that is systematic. It's a process to follow, right? This is the exact same maps. Everything we talk about here is the exact same things that we have done with countless clients. Shane, it's the exact same thing that you've done with.
I thought you were talking about me one time, Trevor.
Yeah. This is literally the map. This is like you and I getting on here every week and just saying, "Hey, here, what did you do, Shane, to grow to a $20 million law firm? Like, what did you do? Well, here's what it is. This is the secret sauce. You guys looking for that magic button? Here it is. This is it." So I would take it for what it's worth, right? Understand that there's a process to follow. But we appreciate you guys being listeners to the show. If you got value from today's show, go ahead and give us a like and a subscribe, or share this up. More importantly, help the show grow. for the very self-interest of we want more attorneys who are figuring this game out, because the more powerful you become and all of us do collectively, right, just the better it makes the industry and holds you in a better spot, because ultimately the goal is to not only just build a great law firm, but to build a great life. Right, build a great version of who you are, and you can do this without sacrificing all these other things. Kind of like my buddy who just like literally took about 6 phone calls in the middle of dinner so he could get on these little leads. And I just was dumbfounded by this. I didn't even know what to say to him. I mean, I'm like, holy shit.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna be pretty pissed and not want to go to dinner with him anymore,
dude. It was like a train wreck, and you watched it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I could see. And then I'm paying attention to the two of them, and I'm like, dude. You guys are not good.
I was going to say, I've had somebody do that, exactly what you're talking about. And then, when the wives went off and we're at the bar, he starts talking about his marital problems. I'm like, well, no shit.
You're like, really? I can't imagine why.
I can't imagine why.
It's
exactly.
So bizarre.
Why does she feel like all you ever do is work and you don't care about her? I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? So one thing I'll say is, if you want help with this, right, and this is something that we're offering up for free, we'll jump in, and it'll be you and I. We're going to jump on a quick call, and it'll be in 60 minutes. I promise you, we'll be able to find at least five areas that you're stuck in, but we'll be able to narrow it down to the one thing you need to work on right now to get you unstuck over the next 90 days that could literally transform your entire firm and help you break through the ceilings that are currently holding you back. To take advantage of that, it's very simple. Just head over to legaledgecoaching.com, and there's a big blue button. Click on that button. It's going to give you access to my calendar. There's a little intake form to fill out so that I know who you are and what you're up against, and then we can have a call and actually determine what in the hell you need to do to break the ceilings that we constantly keep talking about week over week here inside the Legal Edge Coaching podcast. So other than that, Shane, you got any final words on this intake and what these peeps need to do?
No, I mean, whether you like it or not, you got to do a little bit of it, and until you get big enough, you can delegate it down to somebody else, and then you still got to monitor it, but you don't have to do it yourself. But remember, if you're better than the guy down the street, if you care more, if you know the law more, you got more experience, you got more trial, whatever it is, if you're better, you got a moral obligation to figure out marketing and sales so you can help more people.
Yeah, I like your slip there. I think they do. They have a legal obligation. They have a legal obligation to figure this shit out.
But they do have a moral obligation and an ethical. Yep. And if you're religious, God gave you this talent, so you've got to make the most of it to help the most people. So.
Yep. And on that, this brings this show to a wrap. Appreciate you guys. Have a fantastic rest of your day.